Alright guys, today I want to talk about worms, believe it or not, and specifically I want to talk about mealworms. But first let me kind of show you what I have going on. I have a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of happening right here. So take a look at all these tubs, all these, these are all from my hatchlings that I sold. These are all hatchling tubs. I had my little baby snakes in there. And if you look at my rack, it's almost completely empty. The only thing I have left is 2 tubs for my Pac-Man frogs. These guys are so cute. Check them out. Cute little Pac-Man frogs. Wonderful. So as you guys know, I'm getting into the Pac-Mans. And I moved all my snakes. I consolidated all my hatchlings. I have 38 hatchlings left for sale. I have a few albino 100% het pied on the bottom that are stragglers. I'm assist feeding those, and I put I think I have 12 hatchlings that I held back in here, and I also moved Lucy just the other day. I moved her to her new enclosure. Let's check her out. Alright, so I just gave her some fresh water. I put her in here yesterday and she's been tucked up under that radiant heat panel and she's loving it. And you can tell she kind of moved that probe down a little bit, but it seems to be holding the temperature pretty well. And she's definitely a lot happier than she was in the other enclosure. And I put the water here. It's been doing great. The only thing I don't like about it so far is I'm getting condensation on the front of the glass and it's leaking. It's dripping down and leaking out of the tank on the pool table. But other than that, it's been doing great. And I think the condensation is really from the difference in the temperature between the inside of the tank, about 88, and the outside temperature out here. So I'm thinking I can raise the room temperature a little bit just to keep the humidity from building up on the glass. So you guys know I've been getting into the frogs lately. I actually have 2 different kinds of frogs. I have Pac-Man frogs and I have a red-eyed green tree frog. And I went to the pet store today and I was asking him, well, what should I feed my frogs? And he suggested mealworms. And take a look at this. These mealworms, they're really expensive. I got 100 mealworms, just this little bit right here. And that was $10. It was pretty incredible. So then I started thinking, how about what if I breed mealworms and save myself a little trouble and a little cost? And it seems like it's really easy to breed mealworms. I've been looking it up on the internet, kind of researching it, and come to find out you can't breed a mealworm to a mealworm and get more mealworms. So a mealworm is actually a larval stage. And what happens is if you keep a mealworm for too long, it turns into a cocoon, and that cocoon actually hatches and turns into a beetle, a little black beetle, which is pretty incredible. And I was looking up how productive they are, and apparently each beetle lives about 2 months, and over the span of that 2 months, it can lay hundreds of eggs just for one beetle. And so, and the guy at the pet store, he actually doesn't raise his own mealworms, and he buys them from someone else. And I'm thinking maybe on the off season when I'm not selling snakes, I could fill my rack with some mealworm tubs. So take a look at this. This is how you set up a mealworm tub, and it's really easy. So they use like a bedding and a food. It's their bedding and their food at the same time, and then you throw a carrot in there, and the carrot acts as another food source, and it also acts as their water supply. So you really can't give them any water. You give them a carrot and they get the water from the carrot. If you put water in the tub with the mealworms, then the substrate, or the food in this case, would go bad and it would get moldy and the whole thing would be spoiled. So this is pretty much, some people use apples, some people use carrots, some people use potatoes, but it seems like by far the easiest and the one that doesn't mold, if you use a potato or if you use an apple, they're going to mold really fast. And a carrot, you can leave it in there for a whole week and it won't mold, and they'll just kind of slowly chew away at it. And actually I had some mealworms. I bought about a dozen of them. I started putting them on this oatmeal. It's just Quaker oats, and you can see these carrots, they've kind of chewed up the carrots a little bit, and when I picked up the carrots, there was a whole bunch of mealworms under the carrots, so they're definitely drawn to the carrots. And I originally went with oatmeal, and I started looking on the internet a little bit more, and the only thing with oatmeal is you can't sift the worms out of the oatmeal. So this time what I did is I went with this. This is like a ground wheat. So it's the wheat seed, and it's ground up. And I actually bought this bag at the feed store. It's 40 pounds for $10, and they call it Wheat Mill Run. And the guy said it's just like ground up wheat seeds. And it's really cheap, and I could fill tons and tons of tubs. And the only thing you want to watch is that you don't get any mealworms in the main bag, because then I have millions and millions of mealworms, and I don't want that many all at once. I want to kind of spread it out. So I'm going to actually try to feed this frog a mealworm. Hopefully he'll eat a mealworm from tongs. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up these tubs, put these mealworms in these tubs, and I'll show you kind of how I'm going to set it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this whole tub out, because it's kind of dark over here. I don't think he'll really jump around too much. And I put this little bowl of water. I think he finally found the water. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab one of these bigger mealworms, see if I can actually find one here, and then see if this frog will eat it. Maybe. Maybe. I think he was sleeping. Maybe. Well, these frogs are supposed to eat anything. There we go. I think he likes it. Okay, so first we need to understand the life cycle of a mealworm. So the mealworm, actually the adult stage is a beetle, and the beetle lives for about 2 months, and the complete life cycle, they say, is about 10 weeks from the babies, from the eggs all the way to the worms, and then the worms turn into the cocoons, and then the cocoons turn into the beetles. The beetles live a couple months, and then it starts all over. And the beetles actually lay little tiny eggs that are microscopic. So really the way you want to set these up is you want to put mealworms in these tubs, and then as the mealworms turn into the cocoon and hatch into beetles, then you have a bunch of beetles. And then you take the beetles and you move the beetles. They say you should take the beetles and move them to a tub for about 2 weeks. They lay eggs in that tub, and then you move the beetles to another tub, and they lay eggs in that tub, and you just keep moving them from tub to tub. And then kind of on the tail end, you harvest them as the eggs are turning into the mealworms, and you sell the mealworms before they turn into the cocoon, or you sell them or you feed them before they turn into the cocoon and turn into more beetles. And then once your beetles start getting a little bit older, then you have to let some of the mealworms turn back into cocoons and into new beetles, because those beetles have a pretty short lifespan, and you have to replenish the beetles and go that way. So I was thinking, with this whole rack empty, I'm thinking maybe a couple rows of mealworms, and just kind of move the beetles through the tubs, and then have maybe a few levels full of Pac-Man frogs. And between my mice and the mealworms, I should do pretty good feeding on what I produce mostly. So if I kind of shake up this container a little bit and just kind of hold the camera still, you can see this thing is alive with mealworms. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a portion of these, so the black ones are dead, and it looks like there's a bunch of grain and the leftover food and stuff in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just put maybe a quarter in each tub and start different colonies and kind of see how it does. I originally bought about 12 mealworms. I put them in this oatmeal, and I decided to buy more mealworms and kind of boost my production, spread it out between 4 tubs, and just kind of see how the production is starting with 4 tubs. Okay, so I just started kind of dividing them up into 4 separate deli cups, and there is a bunch. There's supposed to be 100 mealworms in here. I'm thinking there's more. There's way more than that. There's probably a couple hundred at least between all these worms. He didn't really count them. He just scooped them out and says, "Oh yeah, that's got to be at least 100." So there's definitely enough to feed my frog and to start these colonies. And I'm just going to dump each one in each tub. It doesn't really matter where I dump it. I could dump it on the carrot because I think that's kind of where they want to be for the moisture is by the carrot. And I have a funny feeling this is going to give me more mealworms than I want. But I'm thinking at the next show in about 3 months, when I do a reptile show, I think I want to be selling a lot of mealworms. Have them out for sale in little cups. And I think I can put maybe little cups in my display rack. I'm thinking maybe some mealworms and some frogs and some different things just to kind of fill my display case at the reptile show, kind of in between seasons, you know, since I've sold so many snakes and it's really dwindling down. I think this is kind of a good kind of a bridge between the snakes, and I can still do the shows in the spring and still have something in my display case, something that'll interest people. And I think there's a lot of people that would buy a lot of mealworms, because I'm sure a lot of people have frogs and lizards and other reptiles that'll eat these mealworms. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.